My name is Kevin Harrell, and I spent 21 years in the Air Force, 1969 through 90. My specialty was aircraft maintenance, centering on jet engine technology. That was my specialty. I remember the news at the time. Walter Cronkite would come on about Vietnam and all the casualties that there were there, week by week. And I got a letter from the Army, which ended up in a 21-year love affair with the Air Force. I was blessed in many ways. Blessings are identified often in hindsight. I was blessed in many ways. I got on the bus to the induction center. I never looked back. I never had any anxiety. This was right in the middle of Vietnam. Never had any anxiety about it. My assignments over the years were in temperate climates. There were no ice station zebra or anything like that. I spent my war years in Charleston, where I met my wife, Luann. I look back on my career, and from this perspective in my life, I realized that God was looking over me in many, many ways. Again, very stable assignments. I wasn't all over the place all over the time. I did understand that the military had a blank check on me, but I was blessed that I never had to go to a combat zone.
My name is James I. Morris, Jim. 1957, I graduated from high school, didn't know what I wanted to do, and decided I would go in the military. And I went into the Army Security Agency, ASA. I attained a rank in 3 years of E4 because there was no rank coming to the field station I was in Germany. I was in Baumholder, Germany. Nothing religious about that place. It had 20,000 troops, American, German, British, and French. I was stationed there for 2 years. I saw Priscilla, but never got to see Elvis. He was stationed there too. But Priscilla was the only one I saw of that family. Religious, I did go, and when I was in Germany, I did go to a dedication of bells at a Methodist church in Speyer, Germany. That was fantastic. That was probably one of the high spots of me being stationed over there for 2 years. There wasn't anything exciting about it, except the fact that whenever I finished basic training and finished school at Fort Evans, Massachusetts, I came home and got married. That was a religious experience. And I've been married for 61 years. And I'm glad I went in the service. And I did go to college when I came back home. So I knew what I wanted to do then. Once you got married, things like that get a little more serious. So thanks, appreciate it, goodbye.
My name is Linda Getman Bryant. I served with the American Red Cross in Vietnam, 1968 to 69, and my final rank was Donut Dolly. And I served in Chu Lai with the Americal Division and in Campanari with the 4th Infantry Division. And my experiences, it was a one-year tour. That was all. There were no before and afters. And how did my faith shape? It was a struggle, because the last few years of high school and college, I left the Methodist Church and joined the Catholic Church. And I think that was partly because I moved south and I had a very difficult time with the whole situation with race in the South. But I think I found a stronger faith while I was there. When I came back, I went through a lot of changes. And it took me a while, but I found my faith again, and it was back with the Methodist Church. And I know that's where I belong now. I believe in everything that the Methodist Church believes in. and it gets reinforced. I've moved a few times and belonged to a few different Methodist churches, but the feeling is always there, the caring, the taking care of my brother. That's the important part that I really believe in, that I believe Jesus wanted us to believe.
Hi, my name is Jeff Russell. I was in the Army from 1967 to 1970. I was drafted, and I decided to volunteer and take the sign up for the extra year in hopes of having some choice in what I did. I spent some time at Fort Knox, Kentucky, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Fort Gordon, Georgia, and then a year in Vietnam. And my last 6 months was at Tobyhanna Army Depot in Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania. My most memorable experience was my time in Vietnam. I have a lot of memories, good and bad, from that experience. The thing that I think of most is the fact that I believe God was with me during that time period. When I arrived in Vietnam, I had a sense of peace, sense of calmness that I think carried me through my entire tour. Although my head was on a swivel, I still, within myself, I really felt that God was watching over me and making sure things would be okay for me while I was serving my tour in Vietnam. I remember the most memorable thing I think of when I returned home was in San Francisco after I arrived from Vietnam. It was amazing to me to see how people were just calmly going about their business, driving down the road, no worries, no concerns about what's behind the next curve or the next bush or whatever. So that was a sort of an eye-opener for me in terms of how my experience in Vietnam had affected me. And the thought that I knew that God was with me and brought me safely home. It was also a time of maturity, and I think God was there again playing his hand in my life to give me some guidance and to help me to grow in my faith and my strength of facing the challenges of life as we all experience. So I relish my time in the service. I think it was a wonderful experience overall, and I was proud to serve my country.
Okay. Hi, I'm Katherine Ling. I was in the American Red Cross in military service. I worked in military hospitals. And by the time I when I resigned from the Red Cross, I was a recreational supervisor. In military hospitals, the Red Cross is responsible for all of the recreational programs. And uniquely, as opposed to civilian hospitals, GIs have to be able to pick up their equipment and be ready for the field. So there were convalescent wards, and part of our job was to keep them somewhat occupied. The question about my faith going into this service, I think part of my faith compelled me to do it. It was one of those things you did as somebody who cared about their country and cared about the Christian faith and our responsibilities to others. By the time I finished 4 years and working with Vietnam wounded combat soldiers, it did impress and correct my faith, or it certainly changed it. I found myself questioning some of the foundational issues, but never questioned my Christian faith and the role of Christ in my life. What I did find was that I needed to look at a broader spectrum of the world, that not only my culture and my background, but the culture and background of all of those patients that I dealt with, and their faith and how they perceived Christ in the midst of all of this. So in many ways, it was an incredibly growing experience and foundational to what my faith is right now. So thank you.
My name's Charles Warren. I served in the U.S. Army. My final rank was E4, and the way my service affected my faith was, especially when I was deployed, it gave me cause to seek a deeper relationship with the Lord. Some days it was really, you didn't have much else to turn to, or much anyone else to turn to, because everybody was kind of in the same situation as you, and had some deep conversations some nights with the Lord about where I was and what I was doing with my life. And I think it shaped me for the better. I hope so. But that's how it affected me.
My name is Olesa Martinez. I served in the United States Army for 13 years. I was a sergeant when I got out in 2015. I had been deployed to various places during my time in the service, and the thing that I did the most that connected my faith with my service is I would always be involved in whatever church I would be near at the time. I was involved in my praise band very heavily in Afghanistan in our little worship chapel that we had put together, and I would be constantly in the church all the time, and that's what would keep me grounded in my faith despite what was going on around me. And I spent a lot of time deployed up in the Washington, D.C. area, where I found an amazing church family, and I was very sad to leave them. When I came back home to Florida, I did come back home, and I came back to TUMC because this is the church I grew up in and I spent my whole childhood life in. So I'm glad to be back here in the church, and I really just kept myself grounded in my faith by making sure that I was always around faithful people and always involved in the church and plugging myself in. And praise and worship is one way that I use to connect myself to my faith.